Welcome to She's Got This, the podcast for ambitious women who want to grow and scale their business and use the power of intentional energy direction to design their very best life. I'm your host, Christine Gallagher, award-winning business coach and mindset mentor to female entrepreneurs. If you're ready to own your brilliance while making bank, step into the absolute best version of you, and become a force for positive change in the world, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Hey, it's Christine. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. If you're new, welcome to She's Got This. Today, we're talking about copywriting. So the first thing to know, a little caveat here, is that we could do a whole 6-week podcast series on this topic alone. But what I wanted to do is give some of my best tips for how I create copy that connects and converts with my ideal soulmate client. So there are a few issues with copywriting when it comes to entrepreneurs. A lot of the times, people will look at copy and they'll say, I'm not used to writing this way, because it's a different way of writing than, let's say, we learned in school, right? It's a way to be persuasive to people, to let them know how your product or service is going to solve their problem, solve their issue, and convince them enough to take out their credit card, right? And the other issue with copywriting is a lot of entrepreneurs have a lack of clarity on their who, like who exactly is their soulmate client. They don't fully have them fleshed out. They don't fully understand it. And the other thing about copywriting that can be an issue is that it is something you can outsource, but it is one of the most expensive things to outsource in your business. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you do outsource it or have somebody else write your copy, which you certainly can do, what happens sometimes is that your voice can get lost. It's not always easy to replicate the way that you would write copy or talk if you have somebody else doing it. Now, of course, the other issue that is going on in the online space is that it's noisy, right? It's noisier than ever out there. There are more and more people asking for your attention, obviously more emails in the inbox and more social media updates out there than ever before. But there is an opportunity here, because the good news is that copywriting, I learned very early on, is a learnable skill, and you only get better when you practice, right? Like many things. And the other thing that we need to remember about humans is that they act on emotions, and we can harness that. That's really what copy does at its heart. And if you sort of put on your detective hat about your market and get really curious about them, it can make the process of writing a lot easier. And the great thing about that is when it kind of flows to you, you understand who you're speaking to, and you have that curiosity hat on, it makes it a lot more likely that people are going to see what you're saying, and they're going to feel heard, and they're going to feel understood, which is super important for connection. And with changing that person into somebody who is considering purchasing to actually buying. And when you get your copy dialed in, you, of course, are able to attract more of the right clients, because the right people are going to have their ears perk up and realize that they are being spoken to by somebody who understands them and who gets them. And then, of course, ultimately, the opportunity with getting better at copywriting is that you make more money and you have more success in your business. So I wanted to go over just a few of the copy components that I think make the biggest difference in connecting and converting with what you're writing. And by the way, copy can be anywhere. Copy can be on a sales page, sales letter. It could be in marketing materials of other types. It could be in social media. It could be in an opt-in page. And the first component that I wanted to point out is the component of curiosity. So as humans, we naturally want to figure things out. We're curious by nature. And the other thing that curiosity does is it keeps people reading, and it entices them to click for the answer. For example, if you include curiosity in a subject line or a headline, if it evokes that curiosity in the reader, they're going to want to continue on reading. And so you'll use curiosity in different things like headlines, subject lines, as we mentioned, blog post titles, sales page bullet points, social media updates. You can really use it anywhere. So I wanted to give you an example of what this looks like. Curiosity if you are thinking about a headline, let's say, or it could be just a opening for a paragraph in social media, for example, you might say, if you're making this one common mistake in your Instagram bio, you're probably sabotaging your marketing efforts. Now, why is this important for curiosity, and why is this a good example? Well, first of all, it's talking about a specific mistake. It's saying one common mistake, which makes people go, all right, am I making that one common mistake? And if we're saying sabotaging, that sounds pretty strong, right? But basically, it's tied to this worry that some people might have about what they're doing in their Instagram bio that is making it harder for them to market. And then we use the word common. We said one common mistake. Common helps people just see that it's not just them, right? So it's common. Whew, it's not just me. I'm not the only one who makes this mistake. And when you evoke that in somebody, a lot of times that helps to build trust. So it's about teasing and revealing just enough with your curiosity provoking copy. Again, whether that's a headline, a subject line, or anything else. We want to keep reading because we're like, what is the one mistake, right? So that's the first component, curiosity. The second component is I use bullet points to tease. So bullet points that are considered teaser bullet points really do create curiosity in people. And it allows you to showcase the benefits of what you're offering, because it's not enough to just talk about the features, right? Like the car is yellow and it comes with leather seats, right? That's great. But what people want to know is like, why is this car the best car? Or why is this the best buy for the money? That kind of thing. So when you think about using bullet points, you can think about using them in lots of different places, whether it's copy for a course or an event or a masterclass, whether you're selling products, if you're selling services. You can also think about teaser bullets in terms of selling things like books. So you might have teaser bullets in the jacket copy of the book. So an example of a teaser bullet would be how you can reduce your chances of having a stroke by 75% with a powerful nutrient. So that sounds kind of serious, but you can see how that is compelling because it's a teaser. It tells people that there's going to be more to come to explain the how here. And it's provocative. It's saying, wow, reduce your chances of a stroke by 75%. That's a lot. And with a powerful nutrient. Well, I wonder what that nutrient is, right? I wonder if that's going to be something that I am already using or something that I need to go use. So it's a example of a teaser bullet, but you've also got some curiosity there as well. Another example would be the number one marketing mistake 98 out of 100 business owners make and how you can easily avoid it, right? So again, number one, very specific, number one marketing mistake, 98 out of 100. That's a lot, right? That's a high chance that you might be making this mistake too. And then of course, how you can easily avoid it. Well, I wonder how I can avoid it. Right. So with teaser bullets, you want to think about some best practices. You want to think about using words that evoke emotion and connect with people's desires and also with their fears. And again, this is not just about like, oh, let's dig in and really drive home the pain, because I'm not really about that necessarily in copy, but it really does have to speak to why they are struggling, what they're suffering with, and what they want instead, because this is what creates that desire for somebody to, again, pay you, pull out their credit card, hire you, say, yes, I'm in. You also want to think about how to pique curiosity. You want to think about how to reduce any confusion that might be possible. So you might want to think about it in terms of, okay, how can I help somebody save a specific amount of money or avoid a major problem? And of course, with your bullet points and with anything in your copy, you want to, of course, be ethical and actually deliver on what you say you're delivering on. The other component is a headline. So a headline we've mentioned a couple of times, but it can't be stressed enough how important headlines are because it's the first thing people see. So you can also think about it as the subject line to an email. It's the first thing people see before they open and read the email. So you want to make an impact and get their attention. And if you find headlines sort of tough to write, it's okay. You're not alone. Again, the one thing that helps you become better with writing copy is practice. And with your headlines, because they're the first thing people see and because it's so important to connect with people and let them know that you get them, having that clarity again on your ideal soulmate client or customer is really, really key. And when we say clarity, we just mean understanding who they are and what their desires are, what really gets on their nerves, what frustrates them, and what their needs are. So some great headline examples. One might be, is your accountant trustworthy? Right? So with that example, you can obviously see that there's curiosity that's trying to be evoked there. Like, is my accountant trustworthy? What should I know about this? Another example of a headline would be a bold statement. Something like, improve how you write headlines because no one cares about your content, right? So it's kind of a bold statement you're stepping out with and really speaking to people about like, okay, if nobody cares about my content, the headline must be really important. So I got to figure out how to write a better headline. Another type of example for a headline would be how to build a high quality, profitable list of prospects who buy from you over and over. That's a how-to type headline. So with your headlines, best practices, as a general rule, questions, problems, and specifics do work best. One of the funny examples that I had when I was teaching this to my mastermind clients was, does your husband hear anything you say? Versus tips for better communication in your marriage. So which one is more enticing there? I personally think the first one is. It's kind of funny also. And it really just speaks to that emotion. Like my mom used to always say to my dad, who they ended up not together, but that's not a big surprise when you hear what I'm about to say. But she would say, he listens, but he doesn't hear. He listens, but he doesn't hear. I can still hear her saying that. But it's a lot more fun and interesting than just ho-hum sort of fact-based tips for better communication in your marriage, right? You see the difference there? Another example would be, are you closing the sale less than 50% of the time versus how to have more effective sales conversations? So that first one is curiosity provoking. It's in the form of a question. It's using a very specific number and it's making people go, am I? Yeah, I think I actually am doing it less than 50% of the time. That's not good. Let me continue reading to see what they have to say about this and how I can get better. Another example would be 39 list building strategies for virtual assistants versus great list builders for entrepreneurs. So I like that first one better. Again, specificity in the number. 39 is a kind of an odd, weird number. List building strategies for virtual assistants. That's very specific instead of just entrepreneurs. So when you think about it, you're also using headlines and copy in your social media updates. And so what makes people take action with email or blog posts or sales pages, etc., is the same that makes people take action in social media. So you want to think about what would make someone click here? What would make someone share this? And a great way to figure that out is to look at like what makes you actually click in social media? What are the types of things that you click on? Or what are the types of headlines that you really love that you've seen on pages or in posts or things like that, where you continued reading because it just pulled you in? Another thing to do is to take a stand with your copy. So you might be somebody who doesn't really love to be really controversial in your social media or your marketing, and that's okay. But what we're talking about is more just taking a stand for things that you believe in. And so I've done lots of posts like this. I've done a post where it was all about skepticism and how skepticism is really going to hurt your business. And the example that I gave in this post was, I'm not sending a newsletter out weekly, or I'm not sending emails to my list because there's so many emails that I get, like who would listen to me or who would see my stuff, or why should I do one more email? And I was basically making a point that you want to do it because of consistency, right? There are so many emails that are being sent out there because it actually works. Email marketing still works. Successful people do that consistently, right? So I was basically trying to let people know that skepticism, when it runs the show for you, it's hard to kind of get off that starting block and it can stop you before you even get started. So you always want to think about, what are some things in my industry or with my clients, or what is something that they might not expect from me, or that would show people that I really believe in this? It's kind of like the getting up on your soapbox moment, right? Getting up on the soapbox moment and actually taking a stand for what it is that you believe in. And you get to decide how much, quote, controversy you want to add into your copy. I also wanted to just give some email subject lines that are enticing examples, because you want your subject lines to be irresistible, because the more people who open your stuff, the more sales that you make. So an example of this might be a subject line that says, please don't do this, Jennifer, right? And that's all the subject line says. And it evokes that curiosity, like, I wonder what they're saying not to do. Another example would be, the clock is ticking, Jane, right? What does that mean? What is the clock ticking on? That's more of a promo type subject line. And a great thing to remember with subject lines is don't give away the whole story. So an example would be why bananas have the most potassium versus what's cheap, delicious, and stops leg cramps. I'm not sure where I got that one from, but I thought that was a really good example. So I always try to make sure I'm not giving away the whole enchilada with my subject lines or even with my headlines. I'm evoking curiosity and I'm letting them read to find out the rest of the story, to find out the rest of the answer. So a few copy best practices in general. Know that when it comes to online copy, there are people who scan the stuff that they read, and there are people who actually read the stuff that they read, right? So not everyone's going to read every word. Some people are scanners. So you want to break things up with things like subheadlines and images and bullets, adding some white space, having some bolding, having some color. My web pages and sales pages always have things like that to break it up so it's not just one wall of text. And so that the people who are really looking for the most important parts can just quickly scan and see them if they wanted to, and it's easy for them to see it. So you want to think about it also in terms of testing by asking yourself, could your headline and your subheadlines alone tell the gist of the story? That's always a good rule of thumb. And the way that you format your copy, for example, on a sales page or in an email, does affect conversions. You don't want people to scan and not be able to get the gist. Other things to think about is being ruthless with your words, right? If you don't need words, certain words there, you don't need to include it. Get rid of it. And think about it in terms of writing how you talk. Write how you would talk to a friend. It doesn't have to be overly serious and overly professional. You want it to sound like you'd be having a conversation with your friend. It's more of a casual type of writing. And of course, as we've said a couple times, you want to use your copy to communicate that you understand your ideal client's desires, what they need, and what they're struggling with, because your offer, your service, your product, whatever it is you're putting out there, you are the bridge for them to get what they want. And if you read over your copy and it feels boring to you, well, that's something to look at also, right? Because you don't want your copy to bore people. So if you are bored by your copy, it's a sign to go back and jazz it up. And you also want to think about writing to an audience of one. You don't want to think about, hey guys, or like, hey people, right? Or multiple people. Think about it as an audience of one. And ideally that audience of one is going to be your ideal client. And just as a side note, I've mentioned a couple times a sales page or a sales letter. What does that do? Well, basically it explains what you're offering and it allows somebody to buy it. And the great thing about a sales page is it's very automated and leveraged, and it's a one-to-many way to sell 24/7 because the page is up. And in general, this isn't always the rule, but in general, the more expensive the offer, the longer the copy is going to be. But overall, no matter what, your main job is to answer objections and overcome resistance. So I hope this was helpful for you. And your next action step would be to write your next piece of copy using these strategies. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or share it with someone else who would find it helpful. To stay connected with me, please visit she'sgotclients.com and sign up for my email list at the bottom of the page. Or feel free to share this episode on your Instagram and tag me at Christine G and I'll repost you. I would love to share this with as many people as possible. I love you. Until next time, keep shining your light.